Hi, I'm Jack Chelman, and welcome to the Impact Report, a program from NextGen Planners and the Global Returns Project. As you know, we focus on the intersection of financial planning and our planet. We cover sustainable investing, ESG, and beyond, and we have a particular interest in philanthropy. That's because charitable giving really matters for our planet and because the research says it really matters for clients too. So, welcome to episode 5, where we're discussing the value of philanthropy advice for the clients of financial advisors and planners. We know that charitable giving really matters for a lot of people in a lot of different income brackets, from ultra high net worth individuals to people who give just small amounts each year. For many, if not most financial planners, however, philanthropy doesn't play a huge role in standard advice offerings for clients. What are planners missing out when they forget to take philanthropy advice into account? To start our conversation today, I'm delighted to say that our first guest is Joe Crone from the Charities Aid Foundation. Joe leads the American Donor Fund team, delivering a market-leading philanthropy service for dual US-UK taxpayers, and also leads CAF's business development team as well. So we'll speak with Joe.
Good morning, Jack. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks so much, Joe. Great to be speaking with you. So my first question is around a report that I know CAF put together a few months ago, and that was on the importance of philanthropy advice, and I think also the state of philanthropy advice in the UK. That was called Advising the Giving Generation. I wonder if you could just start by telling me what incentivized you all to create that report, and what were the goals of the research?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Well, so we at CAF work with a lot of professional advisors, and by that I mean wealth managers, accountants, lawyers, investment managers, and so on. And obviously, they have a fantastic, privileged position supporting lots of clients with their personal affairs and the preservation of family wealth and the legacy of planning the future, the multi-generational approach to family wealth. And we work with those firms to help them understand the kind of philanthropic options their clients have when clients are thinking about their legacy or thinking about charitable giving. And I think what we've seen over the last particularly 5 or 10 years is that the penny has dropped in terms of advisors kind of start to get why philanthropy is so important to their clients and to their business. But we also, I think, find quite regularly day to day that there is a chunk of the advisor community just lacking a bit of knowledge and expertise around charitable giving, long-term philanthropy, and all of those kinds of issues around impact. So at the end of last year, we commissioned a survey of 215 financial advisors to ask them really kind of a few key buckets around charitable giving. So firstly, kind of what's their perception of how important it is for their clients? How confident do they feel when talking about giving? And what do they perceive as the value to their business in talking about and having the expertise in-house around philanthropy? Because our vision as CAF is to accelerate progress in society towards a fair and sustainable future for all, which is a lot. It's a big vision. And part of that mission is about unlocking as much philanthropic capital as possible and making sure it's stewarded in the most impactful way. And we know over time that working with professional advisors and wealth managers and financial planners is a really effective way for us to help make sure that we can fulfill that mission. So we offer a lot of training and support and thought leadership on philanthropy and different types of giving and vehicles and all of that kind of thing. And so for us, really, the research was about trying to just understand a bit better the state of the sector and then talk about what people like CAF can do to help kind of upskill and improve it. So that was really what it was all about.
Fantastic. And I guess, what did the report find on the client side? Do clients want to be charitable? What's the state of client demand for philanthropy advice in the UK?
Yeah, so we at the same time, we also ran a study looking at high net worth individuals last year. So we wanted to make sure that we had both the advisor and the individual snapshot. So we surveyed 500 high net worth individuals. And a couple of interesting things that I just would pull out from that. One is that we found that more than half of younger clients, so those aged 18 to 34, wanted their professional advisors to be able to offer philanthropy advice to them. So actually actively want that kind of support. I think that kind of matches what we see anecdotally, which is that generally I think younger people are interested in being more collaborative and working together to solve problems. And I'm sure you guys probably find that with the work that you do. And similarly, actually last year, Fidelity in the US, the big brokerage firm, their client survey showed that young investors, which for them was aged 21 to 41, were twice as likely to choose a wealth manager based on whether they offer charitable giving advice. So the data is strong in terms of, not just clients wanting to be philanthropic, but actually wanting help from their advisors. And so that's really encouraging. We also know that last year in the UK, giving increased by about £1 billion. So it's now sitting just under £14 billion a year. And the biggest kind of uptrend in growth within that giving was from major donors making major gifts. So although at the moment, generally and understandably, kind of typical everyday giving is kind of flat because of cost of living, we saw that those who can give more are actually giving more, which is really encouraging. And we're certainly seeing growth like we've never seen before as a philanthropic intermediary. So definitely the demand is there. It's just about making sure the infrastructure around that demand is there.
That's really interesting, and interesting from the advisor perspective too, because obviously those are particular audiences that are really important to advisor businesses, right? Especially younger clients and thinking about the wealth transfer.
Yeah.
I guess that sort of lays out the demand for the philanthropy advice. How about supply? What did the report find about advisors' response to client interest in charitable giving, or advisors meeting demand?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed picture, really. I think some advisors, just in themselves really get it. And some firms either offer in-house expertise, or they've kind of developed particular champions within their businesses who can really have those conversations and train others and how to have those conversations and introduce philanthropy. But the actual report itself in the survey found that 63% of advisors that we surveyed said they never or rarely discuss philanthropy with clients. 1 in 5 said they don't know how to offer advice to clients on becoming philanthropists. And 72% don't include philanthropy or giving as part of their initial kind of fact find when they onboard a client. So it's definitely a lot more to do. There are some I think the picture is encouraging. Like what we see across the community of advisors, particularly in London, and whether it's a conference or an event or a roundtable or whatever it might be, philanthropy is on everyone's minds much more. We're invited to speak at events much more than we would previously have been about these topics. So I think the penny has dropped, but I just think that we need to kind of push that community forward a little bit with some of that, getting philanthropy as kind of part of the script and part of the everyday conversation with clients, I think is going to be really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're optimistic the penny's dropped too. I guess just that's still pretty surprising to me that there's this demand that's not being met. And I wonder if you have a sense of why advisors aren't meeting that demand. Is it an issue of experience or confidence? What do you think are some of the reasons behind that?
I think that there are a couple of reasons. I think the lack of confidence partly comes from lack of training. I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because an advisor generally has a specialism. Maybe they're a financial planner, an accountant, a lawyer, whatever they might be. And so it's not fair to expect them to be fluent in philanthropy. That's not part of their training and their core remits. So I think we have to also be fair to advisors in terms of what we should expect of them. And then even if there is a better kind of upskilling or training for them, I think maybe there also isn't complete buy-in from some firms to the importance and the need for it. So we often see advisors who are real champions for talking about giving with their clients, but that might not necessarily be the picture across the whole business. And we did ask in the survey, we asked advisors why they aren't more confident. And 77% said they are not philanthropy experts, which is kind of what I touched on a minute ago. And half said they have never had training on philanthropy. So for us, one of the key takeaways there is our role in helping offer training and facilitating more training. And we've also spoken to DCMS and the Treasury about whether industry bodies could encourage philanthropic training as part of maybe initial financial planning qualifications or ongoing CPD. And that would be an interesting opportunity to kind of upskill people from the very first time they first take a qualification as a financial planner or whatever kind of specialism it is, because I think if we can get some of the more junior advisors buying into this and understanding what's available for their clients from the beginning, that will also help clients who start accumulating wealth throughout their career go on that journey from an earlier stage as well. So I think that's something that we're really optimistic about. And, we go and give kind of lunch and learn sessions and training sessions for advisors. And so I think this just confirms to us there is an appetite and a need for that. And so from our end, we'll be kind of dialing up the volume of what we do in that space as part of our mission. So yeah, I think, we also have to, I think it's important to say we have to be fair to those advisors in terms of what their core remit is and why the kind of philanthropy expertise bit is not as mature as it could be.
Sure, of course. I mean, interestingly, Joe, one of the comments I've heard and I've seen in some of the research as well is that advisors have a bit of concern around the business case for offering philanthropy, that they have to make commercial decisions and they haven't until now seen the research that says this is really something that's going to benefit their firm. I wonder if you have a sense of, is there a business case for doing so and what is that commercial case?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, and this is something that someone like George King from Seiko, I know you're talking to as well, would really champion this idea that actually, if you're an advisor and you can't offer a more holistic approach to working with clients, then you do risk being left behind. I think that's more true now than it ever has been, in that, of course, clients want to look after their family and preserve wealth and make sure that they're looked after, but definitely more so than ever, clients and particularly their children are thinking about distribution of wealth and impact of wealth as much or more than preservation of wealth. And so I think, we've seen over the years, there are tons of surveys. I think the most recent one I saw was from McKinsey in 2020 that shows that when wealth changes hands through an estate or to a spouse when someone passes away, that the advisor is changed. So someone will actually fire the advisor and choose a new one between 80 and 90% of the time. Wow. when money passes down. And that's kind of been backed up through multiple surveys over the years that we often cite. And I think, George and I talk about this sometimes, that actually, given the data we had earlier on from Fidelity and from our survey at CAF, we think actually your ability to retain clients will be strengthened by showing them that you care about the whole picture of their lives. And obviously philanthropy is a really big one. Philanthropy and the impact of your investments and the ethical nature of your investments, all that kind of thing. If you can show an interest in that and show that you're progressive and you're meeting their values, I certainly believe there's a much better case for you being able to retain that family and those clients for multiple generations. And I think that's well understood now. I think that's something that, advisors get. I think, again, this is something George will talk about. I think there used to be this kind of myth or this perception that, if clients give money away to charity, there's less money for the advisors to manage and they'll earn less fees and whatever. But actually, the time you have with the client and the multi-generational work you do with them is much more valuable than slightly eroding their capital by them giving some money away to charity. So I think that's really much better understood now. And I think most of the big firms we work with and the private banks and so on are really taking this whole concept seriously and either bringing in-house expertise in or signposting better to people like us or other bodies that can do that work and offer kind of parallel philanthropy advice to their clients. And I think that's my main message really is, we don't expect all professional advisors to be experts in philanthropy, but I think the minimum standard is that they can understand the ecosystem and signpost clients to the right people that can work alongside them. I think that's one of our key messages, I think.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Joe. That's a lot to think about, and great that there's this research mapping this critical spot in the market for advisors. So great to talk with you.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it.
Well, now on to our next guest to talk a little bit about philanthropy advice from the perspective of advisors. So I'm going to be speaking with Roy Coulson, who is head of proposition at Ativo Group. Welcome, Roy.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be speaking with you on such a great subject.
Oh, thanks so much, Roy. So I guess I want to dig into a couple of your thoughts on the subject of charitable giving for clients. I know that Ativo recently decided to incorporate charitable giving, specifically around climate and nature, into your sustainable offering to clients. And I just wonder if you could sort of walk me through the decision making around that, and what you see as the business benefit of doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think there's multiple reasons. I think, as Joe touched on, there is a demand from clients, of course, and we want to serve that demand. It's an area of huge importance, one that's getting greater and more evident with kind of nature and climate crisis. And I think, look, for us, it's really about making sure that we've got the offerings for clients, making sure that we're able to serve the needs, move down the spectrum of investment. We've always had responsible investing and ESG and sustainable investing, but moving further down that spectrum of investment and allowing our financial planners to take these offerings to our clients is great, but you have to have them available for clients, and you have to be able to engage in the conversation and have a solution at the end. And I think Global Returns Project allows us to kind of really take that step.
Fantastic. And I guess, Roy, from the getting into the weeds of the advisor relationship with clients and those conversations that an advisor will have about important subjects with clients, how does sort of climate and nature philanthropy in particular complement an advisor's conversations around sustainable investing, positive impact? How does it play a role there?
Yeah, so we at Ativo, we're lifestyle financial planners, and we're really keen on looking at what really matters to our clients. So we really, to coin your term, get into the weeds. We have those conversations with clients about what really matters to them, and climate is something that often comes up. A lot of our flows go into sustainable investments, and clients want to invest in this way. And what we're able to now do is have that conversation about not just an investment for financial return and moving down that spectrum investment, but allowing our clients to really move into a space that they haven't really had the opportunity to kind of think about with a financial advice before, which is philanthropic. Looking at climate further now, look, ESG and sustainable investments are absolutely fantastic and go a long way, but the aim is for a financial return. What we're seeing here is an investment in biosphere with a less, I guess, tangible return to investment, and I think that's the kind of real next step. That's the benefit for our financial planners, and opening up that conversation, but by having a climate and nature philanthropic offering is really key to kind of driving those conversations.
That's fantastic. That makes sense to me. I mean, do you feel offering philanthropy clients has to be complicated? Do you think advisors need to be experts before they do so, or can it be a little simpler?
But look, I think touching on Joe's point to an extent is simply no. It doesn't need to be complicated. Our financial plans at Ativo are independent. They're pension transfer specialists. They're chartered, and their absolute giving is in the financial planning, lifestyle financial planning they're giving. And they don't need to be a specialist in philanthropy at all. They need to be aware of it. They need to know the benefits from a financial planning point of view. For example, you can reduce your inheritance tax bill by giving philanthropically. They have to, of course, have an understanding of the offerings that then sit at the end of it, such as Global Returns Project. And I think that's where the expertise then comes to yourself. So we can almost outsource that expertise by having enough knowledge ourselves to be able to know when it's time to hand over to an expert. So the philanthropic part, yes, of course, we can kind of make sure that the training is there for our financial plans and they understand that. But then it's handing over kind of that next part of the actual climate expertise certainly sits with yourselves.
Fantastic. And it sounds like, Roy, I mean, your perspective is because charitable giving on the climate and the nature side fits into those existing conversations or interests that clients have about environmental issues, that it can actually be a part of those conversations in the sustainable investing space in a way that, perhaps other philanthropy might not be able to. So it's sort of a nice stepping stone to other philanthropy. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That it's a very obvious one, isn't it? And kind of a very apparent need. And I think that's exactly it. It is that kind of stepping stone, but also one that we can really focus in on if that's the client's true value and that's what they want to focus on.
Well, thanks, Roy. Really, really interesting to dig into Ativo's thoughts on charitable giving, and especially this sort of special role, perhaps, that climate and nature giving plays within the philanthropy space. Now we're going to hear from another financial planning, wealth management guest about the experience there. My second guest in that space is George King, who's Senior Wealth Manager at Maseko. George, thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Good to see you again.
Great
Glad
to
you're
see
having
you.
this conversation.
Yeah, wonderful. And I know you've, George, been involved in advocating for philanthropy advice within wealth management for quite a while. From your perspective, we've heard from Joe, we've heard Ativo's perspective. What's your perspective on the benefits of offering philanthropy to your clients?
Wow, Jack. Do you have about half an hour or so? That's
Good question. Yeah.
In part because there are so many constituent beneficiaries there, right? So first of all, I think their clear benefit is that we have more and better philanthropy happening. We're actually solving problems or making things better, right? That's one clear beneficiary of all of that. Another clear beneficiary are the clients, the donors themselves, who are actually able to follow their passions, allocate their capital according to their values, and do what they want to be doing with their wealth. When you ask them what their wealth is for, it's not just for themselves often. And so, a second beneficiary are the clients, the donors, the wealth holders themselves. And then a third beneficiary, sort of selfishly, is me and my brethren in my profession. Ultimately, if we have happier clients who stay with us longer, they feel that they're being looked after, our businesses all do better. And when we do better personally and professionally and so forth, there are a lot of beneficiaries in this process.
That's great to hear. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I sometimes hear advisors worry about a couple other things around philanthropy. Sometimes they're worried about compliance. Are they, from a regulatory perspective, are they even allowed to offer philanthropy? Some are worried that they're going to get a negative reaction from their clients because they might touch on personal subjects. I wonder if you have any thoughts on whether those are real fears, whether those should be sort of part of the conversation.
It's really a good question, and it's insightful because those are probably two of the most frequent objections or hurdles, obstacles that come up. On the first one, as you know, and I'm sure everyone you've spoken to on these conversations knows, is that this is sadly maybe, but it is not a regulated space. So the idea that one cannot do it in terms of some type of regulatory hurdle, not being legally, professionally qualified, anything like that, that isn't true, and that's a bit of a double-edged sword. The good news is it means that one can and should adopt the knowledge and skills and expertise and intention to be able to be effective and helpful in this space. Bad piece, or the difficult piece, is it's kind of hard to find who's good at this, who's not good at this, who actually does this, what do they actually do, for the same reason, because the resources aren't codified and regulated and so forth. I will say, though, that the dial is moving in this direction in terms of this being something that is required. You can see already in our profession that the concept of determining the suitability of clients for investing has continued to mature and deepen over time. And it's not simply, have you thought about the relative riskiness of this investment and your client's appetite for risk, or to determine is this an appropriate investment? That the evolution of suitability is now saying, well, actually, you need to think about who your client is, what they care about, what's good for them, and with that broader, more subtle metric of really understanding your client, then determine, are you allocating their capital in an appropriate way? And that more nuanced regulatory requirement, if you will, it should now start to make people think, well, wait a second, I need to know what my client cares about and make sure that I'm allocating capital suitably. If what my client cares about is for a lot of that capital to do good in the world, and I'm not able to, and I'm not raising the question of philanthropy and how they should do it and offering either services internally or using external services to do that, I'm probably starting to fail in my duty to assess suitability correctly and then make sure that clients are allocating their capital suitably. So the regulatory regime is actually moving in this direction. I think advisors are missing the point if they think this is something that they shouldn't do. Not only is it something they should do, it's increasingly becoming something that will become simply best practice, simply something that either the regulatory bodies or the professional standard bodies will say, how can you possibly be a competent wealth advisor if you can only talk about spending and you can't talk about tax, or you can only talk about tax and you can't talk about philanthropy? All of this has to be a component in a wealth conversation, and you need to be able to have those conversations if you are a wealth holder and if you're advising wealth holders.
Absolutely. And George, you just mentioned doing good with clients' wealth, and I was just speaking with Roy about the fact that a lot of clients, perhaps one of the core interests on doing good with their wealth starts on the sustainability side, trying to do something good for the planet. I just wonder if you have any thoughts on the role of giving for the planet, climate and nature, charitable giving, as something that's particularly relevant to client interests on the sustainability side.
It's really funny you should say that. There was some survey work that I was involved with a few years ago, looking at what areas people did their philanthropic giving and what areas that they were particularly passionate about. And there was a big disconnect. Weirdly, people were not giving in a way that was aligned with what they were saying they really cared about. And we don't know exactly why that is, but a lot of the reason seems to be that people give because of where they're at, or what they're asked to give, because their neighbor says, hey, they're invited to this gala, whatever, as opposed to having advice and guidance from some professionals to help them have a coherent plan to actually allocate capital according to their own passions and do that probably more effectively, very likely more than they're doing currently. And the environment and the planet is very much like that. This something that people have been giving for kids and animals and so forth and disaster relief all the time, and that's either automatic or you get that ask all the time, or there's something that's been personal in your life, the cancer things, etc. But the planet doesn't ask, right? And it's too big and it's too complex and it's too long term. And so if there isn't a structured process to help people sort of triage for themselves, what do I really care about? And then make sure they're allocating the capital. It doesn't happen automatically. There needs to be a process to assist that. I know our own process when we are having sustainable investing conversations with clients, the baseline conversation is environment and planet. We're like, look, whatever else you care about, these issues impact that. You care about global poverty, you care about all these other issues. What's happening with the planet affects everybody and everything. That's baseline. So the core thread of our sustainable investing is about environment and planet first, and then usually philanthropically we try and help clients address other areas of interest that they might have.
Absolutely. Well, that's really interesting to hear, George. And thank you so much for your thoughts on this. I know you've been in this space a long time, so it's great to get your expertise on it.
Jack, I'm glad you're having these conversations. Let's spread the word.
Perfect. Thanks, George.
Take care, Jack.
Well, thanks, George. And thanks again to Joe and Roy for a really, really interesting conversation in this episode. And of course, thanks to all of you for tuning in again. Please do join us for our next episode, which will focus on the intersection of philanthropy and fund management, and some interesting new innovations in that space. My final comment, of course, is this program is co-hosted by the Global Returns Project, which is a UK charity helping financial advisors and wealth managers offer clients high-impact climate and nature philanthropy as a part of normal wealth advice. If you'd like to learn more about how to work with GRP at no cost to you or your clients, please do get in touch. My email is jack@globalreturnsproject.earth. Thank you so much.